The electromagnetic influence of the heavenly bodies is not just way out there, but it's in your own electrical biofield. Our electrical system is our soul. It's your biological light, and when you die, your light goes out. In our electrical atmosphere, there is a background pulse that is always going on, and it is around 7.83 hertz. Our DNA isn't fixed chemistry, it's flowing music. The tuning forks start with reflecting the story that's present. They remind your body's blueprint of its fundamental geometric perfection. Ether is the ground state of everything we see. The emergent field, the luminiferous ocean of clear light. Within the ether is the geometry that matter gets built on. I couldn't hear because I had so much noise in my own signal from all of the trauma. I had discovered really interesting phenomenon in my tuning fork hobby. A phenomenon that I couldn't explain and I couldn't understand. But what I was encountering using tuning forks, just tuning forks like this, basically activating them around people's bodies, sort of bouncing sound off bodies and listening to the ping back. And I had been doing that for 10 years as a hobby. Started doing it right over the body, and then that branched out into working around the body and discovering all kinds of phenomenon in this sonar radar kind of way. That the sound basically revealed this territory that was hidden in plain view. And this idea that we have an aura, we have an energy field. At the time, I didn't use the phrase biofield because I hadn't discovered it yet. And I was trying to understand certain phenomenon that I encountered. So, for example, one of the things that I discovered when I moved the tuning forks around the body was that I would find areas where it felt like I was hitting stuff, where there was a sense of mass or charge or resistance. Like it really felt like a substance. And even stranger than discovering these areas of charge and resistance was the discovery that I could actually move them with my tuning fork. I started doing this thing I called click, drag, and drop, where I would click on this sort of resistant mass and I would drag it and then drop it in the midline of the body. So I was really curious. I'm like, what is this stuff that I'm encountering around the body that I can move with tuning forks? And what law of nature is determining the fact that I can use a tuning fork like a magnet, like is sound magnetic? Like what's going on here? And so I did a really deep dive academically and esoterically into understanding the nature of what I was encountering. But very serendipitously, one night at the end of 2009, my son, who was 12, came to the dinner table and he said, "Did you know there's a fourth state of matter called plasma?" And I was like, solid, liquid, gas. No, like somehow I missed a whole state of matter. And this was back in 2009. And I think now people have heard of plasma, but back then nobody had. Like it was very mysterious. And so I actually ended up doing an independent study for my master's degree on plasma. I spent 5 months reading everything I could find and basically figured out in the process of all of this discovery that our bodies have an electrical system that we're never taught about. And that we have electric current running through it. That's what beats our heart, our electric brain waves, our blood carries a charge. A lot of people are learning you need a certain amount of charge across cell membranes. Your bones are electromagnetic crystals. Basically, that all speaks to current running through the body. Anything that has electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. And the human body is no different. So the energy in energy medicine is simply electricity, and the aura is simply a magnetic field that follows a law of science that we already understand.
When I start tuning into it, it becomes really interesting because there are those four primordial forces that work, that physics tells us about, right? Like we've got gravity, we've got electromagnetism, we've got the strong nuclear force, and then we've got the weak nuclear forces. And I mean, the strong nuclear force is kind of what planets are residing with, right? But in terms of what we interplay with as humans are like these 3 forces, and electromagnetism is actually the strongest of the lot of those three. And so tuning our fidelity into like, okay, we are actually electromagnetic. How does that actually change one's relationship with one's awareness of self, especially when it comes to like these elements that you're referring to? Like you're tuning into people's field, and all of a sudden you're feeling like almost like a wand. I'm picturing like a Star Wars lightsaber that's almost kind of going, like there's certain points where the resistance sort of increases, and you can hear the volume turn up a little bit on it.
Yeah, you
What
can hear the volume turn up. It gets louder. Yeah.
I mean, I find that really fascinating because one, you're like, not only are you working with people's field, but then you've also paired that to the awareness that it's electrical and it's magnetic in its source. Can you tell us a little bit more about that source state of like it is electromagnetic?
Yeah. So what I observed, so this is a torus, and this is what I observed, and then research supported that our magnetic field is. So if this is your biofield, it's banded, it has 12 bands, and then this is your body in the middle. So what I would say is that your electric bioplasmic biofield, your electrical system, is what we call your mind, your sense of I, your consciousness, your awareness, the part of you that is alive. It contains your thoughts. It contains all your memories. So if you think about how we create memories, everything we see and smell and touch and taste and feel and respond to is all an electrical impulse in the body. So it would make sense that our memories are stored in our electrical system. And that's exactly what I found. What I found as I poked around in the atmosphere around the body and I found these charged areas, what these charged areas were memories. And they were very specific memories. And what happened is over the course of a number of years of working with many people, I observed a pattern, what I call the biofield anatomy map. So just like you and I have the same kind of inner anatomy, we have the same exterior anatomy, and that the biofield has a very specific anatomy and physiology, and it has all different kinds of features in it. But one of the most primary ones, and what we really deal with in biofield tuning, is your memories. And so what I observed in going through the field was that I found a boundary about 6 feet away. And when I had looked at images of esoteric renderings of energy fields, for example, like the 7 koshas, where you see energy bodies of different densities and they become more and more fine as they move away from the body, but I'd never seen a membrane or a boundary back then. Now we see them more commonly again, but back in 2008, 2009, 2010, there weren't many images that showed the field that way. And so after sort of poking around, it was really a blind fumble in the dark with momentary flashes of illumination where I would suddenly see a pattern. So it was really through pattern recognition and working with people's ailments. So for example, anytime somebody came in with me to see me and they had a left sore shoulder, I always found that there was that they were sad, that something sad had just happened. And as I investigated the field, I would find memories that were sad. And the way that I could tell that it was sad, there are a couple different ways. One is, Amrit, if you and I were listening to a sad song, I wouldn't need to tell you that the song was sad, because you would just know it, right? You would feel it in the music and how it makes you feel. So when tuning forks are moving through the biofield and they come across a memory, that memory is vibrationally encoded there, right? Like vibes don't speak English, they speak vibration. And so I've learned the language of vibration through the tuning forks over almost 30 years of working with them now. And we can find these memories, angry memories, sad memories, frustrated memories, or even current experiences because of the way the sound changes. Just like music, it evokes a particular feeling. And sometimes some people really see images. They like see the memories. They see things that are very specific because it is absolutely vibrationally encoded in standing waves. And the charge or the resistance that we find is basically unhealed trauma. It's unexpressed. A lot of it I feel like is trapped sound Because oftentimes when we have trauma, we internalize our reaction, right? It's not so much the trauma itself, but the trauma response in the body and how that gets kind of frozen. And so then that ends up corresponding. If you have felt a whole lot of sadness and you're generating the magnetic emotion of sadness, and it's hanging out off of your left shoulder because that's the file drawer where sad memories get stored, it has an actual weight. So I'll just give an example of that. I was working with a woman. I was at a little event that was poolside at a spa, and I was just doing chair sessions. And this woman came and sat down, and she said, "Oh, my left shoulder hurts so much, and I've had this and that and this test, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it just hurts." And so I went in and started investigating with my fork. Now, the way that the field gets generated is sort of like hair. So as your hair moves away from you, right, it's a new hair close and old hair far away. It's the same with your memories. So as your electrical experience of life gets generated, it sort of feeds out into these standing waves. So what I find is that memories from gestation are in this outer boundary. Birth is just inside of that. And then if I put a tuning fork 6 feet away, it's like dropping a needle on an album, and I can actually read the vibrational record of your life. So if you're 40, I'm going to find memories that were generated when you were 20 about 3 feet away from you. If it's a sad memory, I'm going to find it off that left shoulder. So with this woman, where I was finding the sadness was really close, speaking that it was recently generated. And I said, "Did you lose someone close to you in the last year or two?" And she said, "Oh, yes, I lost my husband, and I'm still so sad, and everyone tells me to get over it, and I can." So she was just burdened by this emotion that she had been generating that actually has mass. This is the weird thing about it, is that there is a mass. So what's also really interesting to understand is that magnetic fields guide and inform electric currents. So if you are generating a lot of magnetic emotion in a particular area of your body field, then that's going to pull electricity to it. It's going to magnetize electricity. And so you're going to end up with too much voltage running through those wires. A lot of times pain is just like too much current. Inflammation is a jam up of electrical energy. And so with my tuning fork, I'm able to do that click, drag, and drop thing. So I just came and I clicked on all that heavy cloud of sadness sitting on her shoulder, and I dragged it to the midline of her body and dropped it in. And you go back and it's not heavy and funky sounding there anymore. And this woman got up and she rotated her shoulder and she said, "Oh my God, all of the pain is gone. It's just gone." Like, she couldn't believe it. And she sat there on the other side of the pool watching me work, and just with this look of astonishment on her face. And she couldn't believe she'd been to all these doctors, and in 10 minutes this lady with a tuning fork had like taken away her pain.
It's sorry, I'm just picturing her face. Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the thoughts that occurred to me was, as you're describing this field, and it's profound that you describe, because obviously it's in the unseen, but you're describing it as like there's a mass there in the field that literally has, it's drawing in even more current and electricity into it. And like I think it's fascinating that you've mapped the biofield to be able to see that from the at the outside, it's like, earliest towards when you were born, and as you're closer, it's more and more closer to your real time. And I mean, it's kind of poetic. We had Alberto Villoldo on the podcast recently, One Spirit Medicine, and he talks about how, I don't know if you've tuned into like the art of smudging, but you probably have, you're Eileen. But when you burn like Palo Santo or wood like that, he talks about how when you put your intention into the smudge, what's actually happening is the piece of wood, you've traveled around it's traveled around the sun to build these layers around it every cycle around the sun, and those are the rings of the wood. And it's actually coalesced light into matter. And when you actually put your intention into it, there are bits in your field which you're actually putting matter back into light and releasing it, and that's how the smudge and the release actually works. And I just couldn't help but draw the parallels here, but with the tuning fork, you're actually dialing into it. And I mean, I almost literally see it, and I got to stop doing this, but like TSA airport security, like when they kind of like wave the wand over you and it's like, whoa, bing, 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 bing. It's literally what I'm seeing happening with like healing with the tuning forks. The trippy question that sort of emerged for me was, I've obviously got my field, And obviously there's going to be unresolved bits in there, right? Touch wood. And I'm sure later we'll talk about the sonic slide and how we can actually help ourselves work through our bits. We don't actually always need somebody there for us as well. But one of the key things is I'm sure as I'm carrying certain elements within my field, they probably have a certain gravitational, or electromagnetic is probably the word I should say, pull towards other people carrying certain things in their field. And we probably like butt up. And I'm sure there's some that are like, oh, we're like co-victim bonding, but then others that are probably like repelling each other and like activating and triggering. Do you see that sort of stuff happen?
Yeah, absolutely. The tangles in your field intersect the tangles in someone else's field, and you kerfluffle. I mean, that's just really what it is. And the more unhealed trauma, the more distortion, the more tangles that we have, because we're sort of tied up in knots inside, mostly from emotional suppression, honestly. Because most of us were raised in, like where our parents were like abstinence only with emotions, right? Maybe boys are allowed to get angry and girls are allowed to get sad, but for the most part, we were told to zip it. You know, maybe not kids today so much, but certainly in my generation. And so we just internalize, and we internalize with our will, we internalize with food, with drugs, with overwork. There's a million different ways that we can suppress those feelings from arising, expressing, integrating and moving through, really, because an emotion is just a wave. It rises up, it crests, and then it falls away. But if an emotion starts to rise up and we push it back down, the work of Candace Pert showed us that emotions take on molecular structure that vibrate with the information of that emotion. They get trapped in our body. And so our bodies become full of all of these emotions that haven't found their way through all the way. And that's what is all stuck, this trapped sound, this trapped feeling, trapped energy, trapped self, really. I think when I first started to really understand what was happening as I was combing through the field and what I was finding, it made me think of the concept of soul retrieval, speaking of Alberto Villoldo, and the idea that a shaman will journey back in time, find a soul fragment, right? The idea that when you have a trauma that you can't process, a bit of your soul breaks off. And the shaman will retrieve it and they'll bring it back and they'll place or blow it back into the body. And that's what I was doing with my tuning forks. I was like, wow, these are like soul fragments that kind of got left behind. And this is sort of like sonic soul retrieval. And I'm able to like pick up and reintegrate multiple ones, you know, just in an hour session. I can find all kinds of memories and the tension patterns that those create in the body. Because any kind of trauma response or emotion that we're holding is creating a tension pattern. And I've really come to the conclusion, and I know people argue this, lots of people have different ideas about what causes disease. You know, it's the parasites, it's the toxins, what have you. But what I've really observed is that it seems to be tension patterns more than anything, because when there's restriction, that creates inflammation, that creates excess heat, excess electricity in one place, which leads to deficiencies in others, and then things start to go out of balance. But it's all a consequence of tension. And when we release this, so it's kind of like chiropractic in a way, you know, we call them adjustments when we're doing these magnetic field adjustments. The tension that was holding in the body from that trauma response releases. And so whatever ailment was going on, anxiety is tension-based, depression is tension-based, digestive disorders are tension-based. I just worked with someone who had SIBO. She had a really bad case of lower GI dysfunction and bacterial overgrowth. And I could tell just by looking at her before I even picked up her forks that her mother was the problem and that her mother had chaotic depressive energy. And in the Biofield anatomy, the spleen relates to the mother. There's actually a mother spot in the field. It's about the size of a hockey puck. It's about 10 inches to the left side of your solar plexus. And that's a loud spot that I can't move. It just stays there. And when I stick a fork in it, I can read the vibrational signature of your mother. And then when I explore the space between that spot and your body, I can tell all about the vibrational energetic quality of that relationship. right? So this particular area, the mother spot, really informs and is informed by the spleen, where conversely, the father spot on the right side informs and is informed by the liver. So because her mother's energy had been so chaotic, in fact, she told me she hadn't spoken to her mother in 2 years because she just had to like put that relationship aside because the woman's energy was so hard to take. But what it done was it had put her spleen like all in a bunch. And then her pancreas, because the mother's energy was chaotic and it was informing the spleen, her pancreas had kind of gone numb. Like if you have a noisy neighbor, and you're like, you kind of figure out how to wall it out. So her spleen and pancreas were not functioning properly. And her upper GI wasn't digesting food sufficiently. So the downstream solution of her body was to generate more bacteria to help with the downstream job that the upstream area didn't take care of. So the problem wasn't the bacterial overgrowth. That was the body's solution to the upstream problem, which was a problem of tension. And so I was able to get that whole area to release, the mother energy to settle, the spleen to unclench, the pancreas to wake back up, brought the upper GI back online, and then that sorts out what's going on downstream. So I have yet to come up with a particular ailment or issue that isn't rooted in these patterns of tension from old trauma.
Inspired Souls, I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, at the moment, 20% of you who are regularly watching this channel have subscribed, but regular watchers, 80% of you haven't yet hit subscribe. Please do take a moment. Hit that subscribe button just below, hit the bell notification icon. Episodes like this coming out twice a week, championing love, positivity, and wisdom around the planet together. So go on, join the movement, hit subscribe. And if you want to dive in even deeper into a sense of community, we've launched the Inspired Evolution Circle. Join us in community. Weekly, we gather in Zoom calls once a month. Guests like Eileen, Matthias De Stefano coming along to share their wisdom and insights, a guest Q&A for you to ask your questions directly of the guest, and so much more. These community circles have been an absolute blessing to be a part of. If you want to join us, come in even deeper into the sense of community in Inspired Evolution Circle. That's inspiredevolution.com/circle, inspiredevolution.com/circle. It'd be really wonderful to see you in a Zoom call shortly. Eileen, as we're moving further and further into the world, into this 21st century, I mean, things seem to be ramping up quite hard, like astrologically, like people's experience of things, like just in general. I mean, when you use the word tension, I mean, it feels like there's tension generating triggers and sources. I don't want to say more now than ever. I'm sure people have had sources of tension in their lives, but I'm also picturing, people living with the land in a bit more coherence, and yeah, I feel like we're probably accumulating more tensions now than ever before. I mean, you've been doing this work, sorry to date you, but for like 30 years, right? Have you noticed, like, are people accumulating more and more tensions now more so than ever, or is that just something that every generation feels in some way?
I think so. I think that the world has become more complex. There's a lot more interference. Even things like LED lights, which are everywhere now, they flicker very subtly, and that creates a tension in us. Even old fluorescent lights kind of create a tension in the body. The background noise of everything creates tension. I used to own a restaurant, and it had so many different compressors and things going on and lights, and every once in a while the power would go out, and we'd all go, right? Without even realizing like how much tension we were holding against the light and the noise and the sound and the vibration. Man-made EMF waves have proliferated enormously since I started doing this. And that leads to a lot of different kinds of tensions. It also leads to, one of the things I've observed is that it stops our mitochondria from working properly. It sort of inhibits mitochondrial function. So why we have an epidemic of low energy is because of this inhibition of the fundamental electrical engines in our physiology. And then I also noticed COVID really changed things. Like there was a significant change in 2020, so much so that it led me to create a new fork, because so much fear descended on the collective and it created a kind of stiffness in people. And I was finding that the forks that I was using weren't able to get through that as easily. And I was like, I need a bigger gun. And so I did. I went out and I created a bigger gun, and that solved the problem. So yeah, it has been amplifying, I would say, and it's becoming more and more complex. And so people's health issues are becoming more complex, more layered. I do think it's been going on for a while. I mean, certainly generations, right? There has been, every generation has had its pretty large scale trauma to deal with collectively. But COVID really changed things pretty dramatically in the span that I've been working. That definitely 9/11, actually, back in that day, I worked with a lot of clients who were affected very directly by 9/11. And as the years went by, right, that upset was close to the body. And as the years have gone by, that memory has moved away. How many years has it been now since 9/11? But certainly in the first 10 years, that came up a lot. I could find it in the collective. And now what we're finding is COVID, right, is sort of like everybody's COVID experience. It went on for a number of years. It's sort of emerging out into the part of the field where we can really identify it and work with it. But yes, I would say life has become more complex, more stressful, and people are more tense and more sick as a consequence.
Can we find a little bit out more about these forks? Because from my research, they're not just tuning forks that are just willy-nilly made up and they just happen to reverberate. You very intentionally picked certain hertz and frequencies. Some of them are based on the Fibonacci sequence. Some of them are based on like the Schumann resonance. Like you've worked on quite a few different things in your awareness to actually dial in particular forks to particular resonances and particular frequencies. Opens up multiple questions in there. One of them kind of being, are there frequencies that are like damaging to us? And I think that's kind of, EMF, and you literally just spoke about mitochondrial function and how like it can actually turn it off. But then some of these like frequencies that you've dialed these forks into must be like incredibly therapeutic by nature and probably can't go wrong no matter what frequency you're using amongst some of these forks. Can you tell us a little bit more about the forks and the intentionality and the hertz and the frequencies?
Mm. Well, my very first set of tuning forks I got back in 1996 out of a Gaia catalog. And I had been reading about vibrational medicine. I'm very much a researcher and deep diver. And when I get interested in a particular topic, I'll go read everything I can, just like I did with plasma. So at this point, I had become interested in the use of color, sound, and music in healing. And that was after coming across the idea that everything is fundamentally vibration, that there's no stuff, that stuff is an artifact of human perception, but that ultimately it's all one field of light and everything is spun light and there's really no stuff. Even though they tell us like 99.9999% of that is empty space and there's only like 0.001 is a thing. There are no things. There's only waves, and our how our nervous system, our electrical system slows things down so that they seem solid, right? So that and they are in a certain way, but ultimately they're all made of light, just like the tree. It's made of light, right? It's all made of light. And so that very first set of tuning forks was the C major scale. It was C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And it came with a really simple little instruction book. It said use C in the root chakra, D in the sacral, E in the solar, and so on. And that was it. And, it's interesting because over the years, many people have told me, oh, I have tuning forks, but I don't know what to do with them. But I didn't know what to do with them either. I mean, there wasn't really anybody to ask. This is right at the birth of that. It was, I think, a partnership between Jonathan Goldman and John Beaulieu, bringing the tuning forks out into the healing realm. And so I just started playing with them. I just started experimenting and observing. At the time, I was doing massage therapy part-time, and I had some clients that were willing to be guinea pigs. And that's when early on, I thought, oh, the C is just going to sound like a C no matter what I do with it. but it didn't. I thought it was just going to be this objective input, and I'm like, all right, I'll hold this C over you and we'll see what happens. But what I found was, and at that time I was just working over the body, but if I moved it over the body, the sound would change, and it would change pretty dramatically. Some places it would go loud, some places it would go really soft, or the sound would disappear right away. Some places it would sound like it was full of static. It took on different qualities in different areas. And when I first started telling people about this, they were like, oh, that's room acoustics, that's the Doppler effect. I'm like, I understand those things, but there's something else going on here. I don't know what, but something else is going on. And very early on, I had a guy who came to see me because he had a sore shoulder. He had a sore right shoulder. And I held the tuning fork over his right shoulder, and it got really sharp. And then I held it over his left shoulder, and it sounded normal. And he heard it, and I heard it, and I was like, that's weird. And so I just kept on holding it there until after a little while, it didn't sound sharp anymore. And then he got off the table, and he was like, oh my God, all my pain is gone. And I was like, wow, that's cool. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, and still affected outcomes, right? So the tuning fork basically produces a steady, coherent rhythm. And there is a law of physics that says that a strong, coherent signal will overtake and entrain a weak, incoherent signal. So simply by putting a coherent signal near an incoherent signal, and this one, it's like, hey, we're going to be coherent. And the body's like, okay. And what happened was it relaxed, right? It was a tension-based pain. And it was an incoherent mental state that was creating that. And just this steady, insistent, coherent input entrained or brought along the body into a coherent expression. So it's very simple physics stuff that we already understand that explains how this works. You have an electric current, you have a magnetic field. Coherence overtakes incoherence. Even though tuning forks in the energy field sounds really woo, it's actually all very practical physics when you get right down into it. So what tuning forks do you pick, right? So I used that C major scale for a long time. And then I started to feel like I needed a different set. And so this was probably 2005 or so. And I went online and I discovered that, wow, that in the 10 years, tuning forks had really become a lot more popular. And there were all kinds of sets now to be had. And I didn't know what to pick. So I just asked for guidance. I was like, okay, I feel like I need some, but I need some help here. So this is a true story. So a few days later, I ran into a girlfriend and she said, have you ever heard of solfeggio forks? And I said, no, I haven't. And she said, well, I just met somebody who's using solfeggio tuning forks. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then a few days later, I got an email from someone asking me, or they sent me a video of solfeggio tuning forks. I was like, oh, this is really interesting, right? Just a few days later, I met a girlfriend for lunch, and we sat down, and she pulls a book out of her bag. And the book is called The Healing Codes for the Biological Apocalypse. And I can't think of the author in this moment. But the book is the story of how the solfeggio tones were brought back into being. Allegedly, they were found in the Bible. I can't do justice to the story, but it's a whole book, and I read it. And after that, I was like, and the solfeggio tones are based in 3s, 6s, and 9s. So within something like 9 days, I had 3 different people tell me that I needed to get this set based in 3s, 6s, and 9s. And so I did. It was very clear. I was like, okay, it's the solfeggio set. And so I got that and I started using that. And the solfeggio tones, different people have different opinions about Schumann and solfeggio or whatever. I've used a lot of forks for a long time. And I've tried actually all different kinds of sets. I've had probably, I don't know, at least 100, if not more, prototypes made of frequencies that I've dreamed up and wanted to see how they work, right? So with something like tuning fork, it's really easy for people to go completely overboard with them. You could easily amass dozens and dozens of forks, right? I use 10, just 10, and they're highly curated from many years. So some of them are from the solfeggio set. I use 3 from the solfeggio set. I use a 174, 528, and 417. So there's 9 forks in the solfeggio set. But what ended up happening was in 2013, 2014, I ended up developing my own special alloy. Because what was happening is, as I started working with the 174 in particular, this is my favorite fork for field combing. When you get into a really gnarly memory, something horribly violent, incredibly disruptive, like the fork really reflects it. And the fork makes sounds that it wasn't designed to make. And so what started happening was my 174s started to blow. They started to wear out, and they would develop a buzz. So essentially, how guitar strings experience metal fatigue. So with the overtones and the undertones being heavily distorted by this field conversation, it was creating micro cracks in the metal and rendering them not useful anymore. And so I had to work with my manufacturer at Medivibe to create a very specific alloy that would stand up to this field combing process. And so we spent about 1.5 years. He made me all different kinds of alloys, all different kinds of gauges, and I used all of them. And the last man standing, the fork that really held in and really had the best sound and quality for this work, is this alloy that these are made of. And mine are the only forks that are made out of this alloy. And they're more expensive. They're like twice the price of regular forks, but they are real sound healing tools. Like, you get a cheap fork off Amazon, it's not a sound healing tool. It's not going to do the same thing. So I didn't want my students to have to get 9 super expensive forks. And so I was like, let me whittle this down, because I'm one of those people that is always looking to do the most with the least, right? I'm always looking for the most efficient, the easiest, the smallest input for the greatest return. And so I just whittled it down to those 3. I'm like, okay, these are essential. And then in 2021, I created the 144 hertz fork. And the reason why I chose this one, do you want to listen to it? I'm kind of feeling like, let's hear what this sounds.
Yes, please. I thought you'd never ask.
Do a couple. So this fork is really reflective of what is going on. Like if people have fear or anxiety, this fork will go whoa, 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 whoa. You can really hear it. Any kind of twist or sprain or real deep physiological issue, you can hear it. Because everything, not only do emotions have specific frequency signatures or kind of songs in the fork, but every pathology does as well. So an arthritic joint sounds grainy. A skeletal misalignment that'll take on like a fuzzy quality. Fatty liver sounds really different than a healthy liver. A break, you can actually hear breaks in bones because you hear the gap in the sound, which is really interesting. I fractured the outside of my left ankle in a motorcycle accident a few years ago. And everybody who came over, I'm like, come listen to my ankle, because you could totally hear it.
You're meant to be in pain. Meanwhile, you're like, hey, check this. Inspired souls, living beings, if you're feeling out of alignment or feeling like the life that you're living right now isn't the life of your highest calling, then this is why I offer one-to-one mentoring and coaching. As you can tell, supporting people through spiritual mentorship and entrepreneurship coaching is at the heart of my deepest passions and desires, and everything you see around here at the Inspired Evolution is my calling. And it'd be an incredible gift to support you in finding yours. This is the work that I've been doing through mentoring and conscious masterminding for the last decade. You don't just have to take my word for it. This is how people all over the world have transformed through this work.
I don't even recognize myself from 3 years ago. I don't recognize myself from a year ago. All of these things that I've been wanting to manifest in my life, I have them now.
This entire year has been a complete transformation.
He is literally just there to put wind in your sails.
He really seems to
love his work and his clients. He's going to squeeze all the juice out of life and encourage his clients to do the same.
Amrit definitely delivered more than I expected. Was able to steer it in the right way, the way my soul needed to hear. I think that's what makes him so unique as a coach.
He's wonderful. He really can help to do wonders with your project. Go for it.
So if any of that resonates and you feel inspired to evolve and you're ready to live fully into alignment to create the life that is absolutely abundant, free and prosperous and aligned to your purpose, then book in a call with me. amritsandhu.com/call. That's amritsandhu, amritsandhu.com/call, CALL. I'll put a link in the description below. I'd love to hear from you, support you on your journey further if it's in alignment. I'll see you there.
And then my most recent fork, so all my other forks, they're all working forks. They're all doing forks. Like the 144 is like, these are all the things that are wrong with you, right? And it'll just start helping to entrain you into coherence. My most recent fork is a being fork. And this is the fork that loves you just the way you are. And it's a great fork to sit just in meditation with. So, if you don't want to do anything except quiet the mind, right? And it isn't always easy to just sit and quiet your mind. And it helps to have something to focus on. And I think the whole aim of sound healing in general, right? Whatever it is, whatever instrument you're using, whatever approach you're using, is to bring you to a relaxed, aware state. To just really get you to land in this present moment without any ants in your pants. Just be chill right here, right now, ready to play, ready to learn, ready to engage. And so this fork just helps in that aim of just bringing you into one-pointed awareness. Just bring you right here, right now. So I'll do a few of these. 222 hertz. Yeah. So you see how just a few strikes of that, right? Just quiets everything down. And it's so pleasant. It's like a temple bell, It's like, oh, I'm present, What did you notice, Amrit?
Oh, just the permission. I'm not sure if you coded it up that way, so my subconscious was like ready, primed for it. But yeah, it just felt so resting, so restful. Like I could just, like you said, just be. Felt really, really nice. And the interesting thing I'm noticing, and I hate to be jumping around like this, but bear with me just a sec, is just the differences between the two. Like the other fork that you played earlier, I definitely felt it sort of coming through my field a little bit more. Whereas this was almost like, how Peter Pan has Tinkerbell and it sort of just hangs out with him. This kind of felt like, we can just hang out with you the way you are. And it was just, it's interesting it's fascinating actually, how palpable the difference actually is just by tuning into that. And I've got the luxury because we worked with you in other spaces. And one of the interesting thing is with the Sing the Body Electric, you've also got these primordial sounds that actually you sing through, and you shared a few of them with me. I've forgotten them now for the minute, but if you can just visit that conversation just for a quick sec, because that was really profound. That stayed with me for a while when I was practicing these different sounds and feeling the different centers within my body that I could actually hear these sounds. Is it okay to sort of just quickly divert there and we'll come back to it?
We'll come back. Okay, so because we've got the weighted tuning forks to talk about. But
I know, because there's weighted and unweighted, and I know there's 5 of each. So, but I'm just sidebarring for just a sec.
Yeah. So let's sidebar into voice. So, so my other work, in addition to using tuning forks outside the body, is using voice from inside the body.
When did this start?
This started in 2020, and it started very unintentionally. It's a whole sort of happy accident that was actually largely informed by COVID and the travel restrictions from that. But back when I was young, this is actually a little bit more of a sidebar because it's sort of an important piece. I got very clear guidance when I was 20 that I needed to learn how to sing, and just inner guidance. And I come from a non-musical family. I was the kid who was always singing off key in music class, clapping on the offbeat, squeaking my clarinet, like hopelessly non-musical. And so I tried to ignore this guidance. I was like, go away, that's completely ridiculous. Like, no. But I think anybody who watches your show, Amrit, probably understands that when something needs to happen, that guidance is really persistent and it doesn't leave you alone. It's like that scene in Harry Potter where the letters are coming down the chimney and in the windows and under the door. It's such a bombardment of like, this is very important.
Such a great visual. Yeah.
So I relented. And I went to see this local woman, and she started to play the middle C on the piano. And she's trying to get me to go, la. And I felt like I had hands around my throat. I started to sweat. My knees started to knock, and I couldn't make a sound. And finally, after I don't know what felt like forever, I finally croaked out something. And then I burst into tears. And this poor woman just looked at me from her piano like she was not equipped for what my experience was. And so I left that, and I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like, what happened to my voice? Like, where did my voice go? Because clearly it was stolen in some way or another. I don't have a voice. I don't have a singing voice. And then I had a terror of singing in front of other people. And not just a fear, but a really big irrational terror. And so that began a 7-year journey. I had 7 different voice teachers over the course of 7 years. And the first 5 told me that I was tone deaf. They're like, you're tone deaf, you can't sing, sorry. And I was like, you're a bad teacher, next. And what I discovered, and this is part of what put me on the healing path, really, was that I had a pretty traumatic childhood. I was the youngest of 6, and my parents were very hands-off, and I was a lot littler than everybody, and I got tortured and tickled a lot. I got pinned down. I got regularly, and people were always coming after. It was always under attack, and so my whole physiology kind of did this. My dad had a massive stroke when I was 10, and there was a lot of things. There was also sexual molestation that was all in the mix as well. And I've been living inside of this body that was traumatized and insanely tense. And in the Biofield anatomy, the kidneys, and other approaches as well, the kidneys hold shock and fear and adrenaline and stress. And my kidneys just had so much noise in them. The kidneys inform the ears. So a lot of us know that the liver informs the eyes, but the kidneys inform the ears. So the reason why I couldn't hear was because I had so much noise in my own signal from all of the trauma. Yeah. And so I ended up that's when I got into massage. I started doing body work. I started doing yoga. I got Rolfed. I started relaxing. This comes me back to everything is tension based. Even tone deafness is tension based. And so anyway, by the time I got to my 7th teacher, I was making strides. I could finally start to hear because the noise in my signal started to diminish. I ended up with a little tiny band, and we were just playing together, and I was toning, interestingly. I wasn't singing songs, I was toning. This is back on my last Saturn return. But then I ended up getting knocked up by the drummer and getting pregnant and getting married and having kids that are all grown up now. In fact, that kid is about to have his own kid next week. So I
Congratulations.
I went on this long journey of motherhood and tuning forks, because I ended up just sticking with the tuning forks but stopped the whole voice thing. And then back in 2019, I got that guidance came back, and it said, okay, Eileen, you need to take everything you learned about sound healing, about the biofield, about intention, just about sound in general, and you need to go back to voice now. And so serendipitously, I was introduced to Isaac and Torald Corin, who have a program called the Songwriter's Journey. And what they do is they help people like me who are scared to sing in front of people to get over that fear, and they co-write and then record a couple songs. They got a little recording studio. They're so wonderful. They're these two Australian brothers that are like the safest characters you could possibly imagine, and they just midwife people through this fear. They've been doing it for a long time. And so when I started working with them, when we got to the point where Torald and Isaac, Torald does this body as instrument exercise where you kind of bring your mind into your body and you start sounding from your body. And what I discovered was that I had all these places in my physiology that were collapsed, that were like, right? Because when you're under attack regularly, you collapse. Like that was my whole posture, like daily, was protecting myself. And so my whole inner architecture had all of this collapse and pull in it. And so as we would go into one area and we'd make sound and open it up, it was like a rope and pulley system. And it would like, one place would open, but I was like, well, that connects down into my knee now. And then we'd have to like go to the knee and figure out what sound to make in there. And so something that he ordinarily would have done for a few weeks with people, we ended up doing for months. And part of it was me kicking the can down the road because I still didn't feel comfortable singing in front of them. I'm like, I need to tone more. And so what that ended up doing was really leading to, like, when we first met, our very first Zoom meeting, we were instant kin. We just like remembered each other, right? And so when these sounds started coming through and we started to realize that there was like this inner architecture of specific sounds, we started working on it. It felt as if we were remembering it. It was really interesting because the whole work, so what we created is what we call the sonic anatomy, which is 42 different sounds, and they're like baby sounds. They're like goo, gi, ga, ma, pa, wa, da, ha, sounds like that. Very primal, primitive root sounds that babies everywhere make, right? And they make when they are discovering their resonant cavities and their voice. So this system of 42 sounds became couched in a program we call Sing the Body Electric. In fact, we just finished up a 5-week course, and we've been doing this since 2021. We've led thousands of people through this process. And what it is it's this really fascinating backdoor way to liberate your voice, right? Because the voice is the instrument of the soul. And most of our voices are shut down and trapped. And we're coming back to this Biofield model when I say it's trapped sound, right? It's like your potential as a human being comes through your expression. And if your ability to express yourself is all tied up in knots like mine was, and so many people's are, right? Then you know that there's more, you have more potential than you're accessing. You know that you are supposed to sing as a human being, you want to sing, but your voice is, trapped in a way. And so I think we all have this yearning to experience soul liberation. We want to know and live what our potential is as human beings. And it's by our word that we create our life, right? So when people go through this program, they don't only become better speakers, better singers, they enjoy their voice more. They start speaking their boundaries. They start speaking their desires. They become better manifestors. Their soul starts to manifest in their life, like they externalize through this vocal liberation. And it's such an amazing process to watch. And so when you combine this sort of freeing you up from the inside and freeing you up from the outside, it's such a nice shortcut into that potential, right, that we all know we have.
Hi there, Inspired Souls. These forks sound incredibly amazing. The sonic slider is something I am excited to receive, and I'll let you know how I get on with it. The links to accessing these forks will be below. There's a special discount for all of you that are here at the Inspired Evolution. So if you are interested in these forks and you do believe they could support you on your journey of health, wellness, and opening up all the stuck places, check out the link in the description below along with the discount code. So I wanted to take a moment also to just thank today's sponsor for the podcast, earthing.com. Clint Ober and the team came onto the podcast and they were kind enough to educate us on earthing. And once they came on, it was just so profound how important grounding is to our well-being. In a nutshell, all the radiation that comes off the sun that basically feeds into the earth gives it so much energy for life to grow, to be nurtured, etc., so on and so forth. But it comes in the form of electrons, and we take them on throughout the day into our body, and it's all well and good. Actually, that's what energizes us, as long as we're returning that energetic flow back into the earth. However, now we live in concrete environments and we wear rubber soles. So all that energy is rebounding back up and down into our system and not actually discharging back into the earth. This is where grounding has become really incredible medicine. As Clint Ober puts it in his podcast here on The Inspired Evolution, that energetic charge, electric charge, creates fire inside you. That fire is what we call inflammation, and most diseases come from the inflammation that's generated in your system. So we're proud to be partnered with earthing.com, and with the discount code INSPIRED, you can get 10% off absolutely everything on their website. My favorite products, as you guys know, is there's an earthing mat underneath my desk here, which really helps with all the studio lights and whatnot. I'm sure there's lots of EMF and electric radiation coming into the system, but consistently, even while I'm sitting here through these podcasts, nice and grounded, connected to the earth. My other favorite product is actually the one that I've got on my bed. So literally the 8 hours, 9 hours that you're spending in bed a day, you are literally grounding whilst you sleep. There is no substitute for getting out and putting your feet in the earth, but this is the very best next thing, and you can do it passively while you're engaged with other things throughout your day. So once again, that discount code is INSPIRED at earthing.com. Links in the description below. Hopefully it supports you on your journey. Back to the podcast. Oh, Eileen, I mean, part of me is looking for the membrane that is you now, because you've got the tuning forks dialing in your field from the outside, and then you've got the Sing the Body Electric. You can sort of see how you've mapped in, and I mean, for me, it's so profound as well, because it's not just primordial sounds. Each of the sounds actually roots into different parts, like you said, cavities of your body as well, and just the way you've mapped that out, and then the way you've mapped out the biofield. I mean, it seems like vibratory health, electric health is just at the center of it all. And I mean, it sounded like a sidebar when we went on here, but really this might be fork 0 or fork 11, which is like the human being as the fork themselves, which, you know, you like learning to tune in yourself. So I've got plenty more questions about that, but I'm conscious we were on a sidebar. So we were discussing forks. You've got 5 non-weighted, 5 weighted.
So let me just talk a little bit about the weighted ones. So the unweighted ones you don't really use on the body. If you activate it and you put it on yourself, you really don't feel much vibration. So there's not much point in doing that. These are really just for over the body and in the field. But the weighted forks we can use both on the body and in the field. So my very first prototype that I ever created was actually this one. It's 62.64 hertz. And what this is the Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz, times 8. So I had been using one of the sort of standard weighted forks that a lot of people pick up as a weighted tuning fork is 128 hertz. Pretty standard. You know, your doctor has it to test your reflexes and things like that, your neuropathy. And I was using that, but then I really, you know, as part of understanding electric health, our electrical system, we live in an electrical atmosphere as well, right? So the plasma isn't just the bioplasma of your electrical system. It is when you go to the beach to recharge, that is an ionized environment. That is a plasma-rich environment. When you buy an ionizer for your home, a plasma wave generator, that's generating plasma for your atmosphere. We like negative charge, right? Negative charge that we get when we go forest bathing. Any of these things we do to recharge, we're going into a more rich plasma environment. A city without trees, with a lot of electromagnetic man-made radiation is going to have a lot of positive charge, right? And so we leave these positive charge that makes us feel heavy and tired and spent, and we go into this sort of cooler, more plasma-rich environment. So our atmosphere has a charge, and we know this, and we know the higher up you go, the more voltage there is in the atmosphere as well. So in our electrical atmosphere, there is a background pulse that is always going on, and it is around 7.83 hertz. A lot of people have heard of the Schumann resonance. There's sort of an internet story that the Schumann resonance is increasing, and that means that Earth is ascending because higher vibes are better. And I don't really buy any of that, because the Schumann resonance is created by the size of the cavity that these standing waves are in, right? Are happening, and they're caused by lightning.
It's more physical. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And if the frequency was rising, the fundamental was rising, that would mean the cavity would have to be getting smaller, right? So that's kind of what determines that, just from a very basic physics perspective.
The atmosphere itself. Yeah.
Yeah, the atmosphere would have to be getting smaller in order for that fundamental to be getting higher. Now, what we do see sometimes for people who watch Schumann observation things is that you see spikes in the amplitude and you see the overtones being accented, but the fundamental stays around 7.83 hertz. So that's our brain in a meditative brainwave state, sort of what's called the alpha theta cusp. When you're in that meditation where you start to blend into the world around you, right? That oneness, awareness, or right before you fall asleep. So that's that frequency, that background pulse, is something that our body is accustomed to receiving and interacting with. But you can't make a 7.83 hertz tuning fork because it would be like 4 feet long, right? The lower
a bit of a weapon.
And through TSA with that one.
But I'm picturing someone playing baseball with one.
Definitely, it would be interesting. But anyway, the lowest frequency weighted fork that's made is 25 hertz. And even that is a very long fork. So anyway, I decided to try some different harmonics or overtones, and just sort of on a gut feel. And I sort of settled on the 8th. And so this is 62.64 hertz. And what was so interesting was that when I first used this, I'll never forget the first person I used it on a friend. With the 128, what I observed was that I activated it and I put it on the body. It would just vibrate in that part of the body. But when I did this fork, it felt like an intelligence moving into the body and like finding where it needed to go. The way that I described it, it's sort of a funny analogy, but for anybody who's had cats, like there are ordinary cats and then there are cool cats. And some cats are just way cooler than other cats, right? And I was like, this is like the cool cat of tuning forks. It just had this character to it that the 128 just didn't have. So anyway, I used this for a while, but then I realized that I wanted to have a pair in order to use them to create a binaural beat. So some of you are probably familiar with what a binaural beat is. It's when you play one frequency in one ear and one frequency in another. It's usually done with headphones. It's usually done digitally and not acoustically. But what your brain does is it creates the difference between the two. And so if we want to induce that brainwave state, okay, we can do it binaurally with this. So then I had the 7th harmonic made. So this is 54.81, 62.64. The difference between the two is 54.51, is 7.83 hertz. So if we hang out with these next to our ears and we just do this for a few minutes, it brings your brains back down into like a very calm state. So a lot of times we're just in beta and overthinking and fussing or whatever. Like if somebody comes in and they just had some kind of car kerfluffle or, you know, some kind of upset and they're all like, I just put them down on the table. I don't know if we can hear them through that. Can you hear that, Amrit? No. Yeah, you can't really hear the weighted forks. I mean, I can when I get them right next to my ears. But what this does is it gets the brain hemispheres synchronized and it just settles you right down. And you can even do it. You can sort of press these against your ear flap there, right? And you can really, like, there's no way to have a thought when you've got blah, 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 going through your head, but it will immediately shift your state, right? And that's, I think, in this stressful, tension-inducing world, we want to avail ourselves to things that will shift our state quickly. And sound does that. It just gets right in and settles things down. And sometimes just truly amazingly. Okay, so then the next pair that I created is the Fibonacci pair. And this brings in a whole other topic, the ether, right? Because my work, we learn about solid, liquid, and gas in school. My work incorporates two additional states of matter. Plasma, that's the Schumann forks, are the Earth's electrical background pulse, so they work with your electrical body. But there's also ether, and I don't know how deep we want to go into that.
We want to go into that. We want to go into that.
So present in the ether. So the ether, very simply, is the ground state of everything we see. The ether is the one that the
emergent
many
field.
arise from. Yeah, the emergent field, the luminiferous ocean of clear light that spins itself through torsion, and it divides from being one into two into the positive and negative charges. So ether spins into plasma, and then plasma spins into gases, liquids, and solids, right? But it all is precipitation of different densities, fundamentally, of ether. And so within the ether is the geometry that matter gets built on. The platonic solids, all manner of geometry, right? And then one of the fundamental things about sacred geometry is the Fibonacci sequence, the golden mean, the golden spiral, phi, 3.14, ... And so while those inform our electric body, the Fibonacci pair inform our etheric geometric template. And these are the 11th and 12th positions in the Fibonacci sequence, are 89 and 144. And so when we use these together, these have the information of phi, or the golden mean, the golden ratio, order, beauty, harmony, truth. You know, like the old buildings, the ancient buildings that stand forever, right? Built in the Fibonacci sequence in the golden mean. And so that's this pair. And these just help kind of create a sense of inner order. They remind your body's blueprint of its fundamental geometric perfection. Well, that's the way nature is built. So that's what those are about. And then the last one I have is the sonic slider. And this one's like the all-purpose, what fork should I start with? Start with the sonic slider. This is the Schumann resonance 7.83 times 12. And so it's interesting because you asked about are any frequencies like damaging or disturbing. The 11th and 13th harmonics of the Schumann resonance are horrible frequencies. Really? The 11th is like deadening. It just is deadening, but not in a good way. The 13th is completely neurotic and like all over the place. But the 12th is just right. And like of all the frequencies that I've played with, and I've played with many other people's sets, all those prototypes, there's something about this particular frequency that is so pleasing to everyone. Right? Like most forks, you use them a little bit, like this 144, like I'll put it on myself, you know, after a minute or less, you're just done. You're like, okay, that was enough of that. This one you can just play with. You can rub it on yourself. You can put it anywhere. Kids love it. Pets love it. Plants love it. You can use it for pain. It adds tone and rhythm to your digestive tract. It helps people with food allergies and digestive issues. It's useful for bug bites. You get an ant bite or a mosquito bite. You just put it on and let the vibration run all the way down. It takes the itch out. It's like I have so many incredible comments from people about how much they love it and all the ways that they used it. And you can just keep on, you can't really overdo it. You know, you can hang out with it for a half an hour and you just seriously don't get tired of it. And what it's doing, well, it's doing a number of things. So one of the things that has been determined, and this was from a Harvard study, is that mechanically stimulated tissue heals 2.5 times faster than non-stimulated tissue. So if I have a tuning fork, I don't have any of them with me with boots, but I have different accessories that go on the bottom. I have like a boot that's an amplifier.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. Yep.
Yeah. And so when you put that on it, that is mechanical stimulation. It's acoustic. It's not like a massage gun going, hammering at you. But people are using it to help them heal faster from injuries, even from things like burns. Because as you mechanically stimulate the tissue, it gets more blood, more lymph moving, just more energy moving, and it causes the tissue to heal faster.
I'm going to put a link in the show notes below for those that are interested in a fork. I mean, yeah, I'm rushing to go get mine as well. So there's a couple of things in there as well that I wanted to tune into. I've got 3 questions stacked up in my mind. Let's start with where you've just left off. In terms of fascia, because my awareness is fascia is this thing that also transports light based on Chinese medicine through your body. And so, as you said, the mechanical sort of is this working with your fascia in some way, and how is that unlocking light in your system?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Amrit. So when I first designed the sonic slider, I actually created it to use on the face. It was like a beauty tool. It was like, oh, I need to iron my face at the end of the day kind of thing. And that's how I started using it. After doing that for a few months, I decided to try using it on my body and see what would happen. And a very wild thing happened. And I'm an outlier. I'm an outlier with most things, so I don't want anyone to think that this is a guaranteed outcome. But when I started using it on my body, simply by sliding the handle, right? That's why it's called the sonic slider. So you just, like dry brushing, you just slide it all over your body. So I did that. I came all out in bruises, and I lost a whole bunch of weight in a really short amount of time. And so what I figured out was happening was that, again, because I had had so much contracting as a child, that I had lots of fascia knots. And when you have fascia knots, you have capillaries sort of all wound through there. But when I started rubbing this on my skin, on my fascia, what it did was it untangled and smoothed out those fascia knots, causing those capillaries to break and bruises to come out.
Can I just jump in there for a sec? Because I've got something like a Theragun, right? Is that because that's so intense that it doesn't behave the same way? Like, does it require a more subtler approach that these tuning forks afford? Because that's quite profound. Like, you're unlocking things and bruises are emerging.
I know. Yeah, because here's the thing, is that the Theragun doesn't have a conversation with the body. Because this is acoustic, right? Think about what I was telling you in the very beginning. It's like the tuning forks start with a conversation. They start with listening. They start with reflecting the story that's present. It's only after listening and engaging, right? So that allows them to be diagnostic. They're having a conversation, and then they're in training, right? So it's the same when we're putting a fork on the body, is that, like, I can put this on your sternum and I can tell you a dozen things about yourself. Just like in Chinese pulse diagnosis, when they read your pulses and they say, did you have a kidney infection when you're 24? And you're like, how did you know that, right? It's the same sort of thing. Like, your whole history, everything about you, your mind, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your habits, is all rhythms and flows in the body, and it's all a language. So when I put this on your sternum, I'm using it like a stethoscope, and I'm listening deeply to the stories in all of those rhythms, right? So there's a conversation happening, especially with the sonic slider, because it's based in the Schumann resonance, which the body already likes. And so I feel like you can go in a lot deeper, because you're not just coming in and hammering on it. You're like listening first and getting a whole kind of rhythmic groove going on that the body isn't trying to tense itself up against, right?
And then you're dialing in and getting underneath almost the blocking mechanism to really draw and pull some of these things out.
Yeah, exactly. And so as all of those fascia knots gave way, because I was holding fluid, I lost water weight. I had night sweats. I peed a lot, and I went from being a size medium to a size extra small in 5 weeks. I just went whoop, and that was a little alarming because I wasn't trying to lose weight, and I had to
We've
get
lost Eileen.
It was a little surprising. And then I was like, wow, this is an amazing tool. Like, if this does this for everybody, that would be cool. But it doesn't. Like, not everybody loses weight. Some people definitely do, and we have lots of before and after pictures where you see people that because what are you doing? You're adding tone. Like, you're adding tone to the body, that you become more toned. So it's but it's also like very good for nervous system regulation. It's sort of like rubbing a purring cat on yourself. You know, it's sedating but also energizing in a good way. Although some people can't do it before they go to bed because they get too energized. But that's what I also found was that it increased my energy. It made me feel sort of springy. You know, at age 50, I was like, wow, I feel springy. Like, who knew that could happen? So it's a great tool. The thing is that if you really want to experience maximum benefits from it, you kind of have to use it every day. You know, if you just use it here and there, like, oh, I got pain, whatever. But if you really want to like get your blood and your lymph and your energy up and your fascia ironed out and more information transmitting through that fascia, right? Because it's definitely part of our electrical system. So you
Amazing.
just regular, yeah. We're just petting yourself regularly with sound.
And then you can respond almost as in a purr. Like this is, yeah. Okay. One of the other questions I had was intention. So, because obviously yourself having been working with this for such a long time, there's a level of intention and belief that you carry in and around this work that I'm sure has a ripple effect in your field and those that you're working on and with. You've obviously trained so many practitioners into becoming, is healers the right word, or practitioners of the tuning fork is probably the easier way to sort of access it. What role do you find intention plays? Are practitioners bring themselves carrying a particular type of like non-judgment or something intention into the space, or are they actively trying to program like healing into the forks, or are they just trying to empty themselves? Like what's going on here in terms of intentionality that's being carried behind the fork?
That's a good question too. I think that our intention is always to listen first because the body knows what it needs. And it's best to not have any preconceived notions. I mean, I wouldn't even do intake forms. Like, I don't even want to know what your story is. I just want to listen to your body because your body's going to tell me. It's going to show me where those dissonant vibrations are. We could get right into 5 minutes. You know, I worked with a woman that had debilitating anxiety for her whole life. She'd been on and off meds, and she'd been, this doctor, that doctor, and she was ashamed of herself because her anxiety was so strong. And within 5 minutes of having her on the table, I was like, did you have a really traumatic birth? And she said, oh my God, yeah, like I almost died. My mom almost died. I'm like, this is your problem. Your very first stress response, you revved up all the way into the red zone and you bored out your engine all the way to the red zone. And so now anytime you have a stress response, you just go there. And so because this was precognitive, right? It was birth. So she's trying to go to talk therapy to talk about something that is completely without words. And this is really one of the things about this work that I really appreciate is this ability to go into birth, to go into those precognitive, like before age 3. Because those memories inform us so much more than we realize, the traumas at that time. And they're the ones that are really hard to process or even understand because we don't have words to go with them. And we might overlay and try to come up with stories or whatever, but what's happening is that you have a particular rhythm moving through your body in your memory banks from that trauma. It never goes away. Like your wounded child is with you every day in your memory, in your electrical system. And those vibrations are present still. It's not like you can just let it go. You know what I mean? It's vibrations moving through fluid. It isn't something you can just like mentally let go. And some people can to some degree or another. But with the sound, we can go right into that source and that, so I could go right to her birth and all of the trauma and the noise and the signal from that birth and just stay there with a fork. And I just stay there and I just reflect it back to the body. I'm like, hey, body, listen, what's going on over here? And the body's like, whoa, that sounds really bad. Who knew? You know what I mean? And so it's like a mirror for the body. It's like you don't know that you have a seed in your teeth until you see a mirror. As soon as you see the mirror, your first impulse is like, oh, I'm going to straighten my hair. I'm going to take the seed out. I'm going to straighten my tie, right? We use reflections to bring ourselves to order. And that's exactly what your organizing intelligence does too. So the tuning fork is broadcasting the signal of that disorder But it's also got this steady rhythm going on and the coherent signal that's underneath. And so that starts to become stronger, and the body uses that input to order itself. And all of this noise that's been in your signal from that time starts to settle down. It's like we can go back and rewrite the audio file. We can take out the highs, we can take out the lows, we can balance it out. Now, on a certain level, we're indelibly impressed by life, right? There's a certain, like, I can't take away your memories, I can't change the past. But it can change the way that your whole system is referencing and expressing that memory. It can settle it down. And so just from that first session, one, she had a huge relief at understanding like where it came from. Right? And then secondly, it was settled down in her system so that the next time she had a stress response, she didn't go all the way. The TAC didn't go all the way into the red. And after just 3 or 4 sessions, she was like hardly anxious at all anymore, because it's all vibrational and tension based and rooted in this very deep part of the psyche that most things don't ever get to.
Another one of my questions is, we're 70% water. And for anybody that's had electricity and water sort of mix, I mean, the two kind of, like, there's definitely a dynamic between the two, right? And so I'm looking at the forks and even just vibration as you're sort of referring to it. I mean, you recently went away for a conference with, and, you know, you were co-speaking with Vader Austin. And I mean, I'm just picturing sort of the conversations that you guys must have been having. But vibration, electricity, water, the impact of, in your awareness around the body's sort of water systems, and how much, leaning into some of Veda's work, like intention and memory is carried in the water system internally, and then leaning into your work and the biofield and the memory that contains. And I'm feeling into somewhat, you know, the morphic resonance and Rupert Sheldrake's work and stuff in there. Like, there seems to be this real vibration, memory sort of dynamic. Your awareness around this work and how it impacts with the water in our systems?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's really all about the water, right? I think water, we know that water holds memory. We certainly, and it's all one water. You know, water is just a denser form of ether. So the ether is the same as the Akasha. It holds the information of everything that ever is, was, or will ever be. And water has the same properties. When we talk about consciousness, the consciousness of water, the consciousness of plasma, the consciousness of ether, right? That it's all one thing, it's all conscious, it all holds all of the memories. It's all one. So it's really all one and the same. I mean, even when I was talking about when you end up with a magnetic blob from overindulging a particular emotion, there is like a low pressure system there. There's more moisture there, right? When we talk about being blue and people under a cloud, or people being wet blankets, that's all metaphor for the literal way that water will accumulate where there is magnetic energy. So your field, even that double layer membrane, I think has to have more water in it, right? Because there's more electromagnetic charge, but it's also like a bubble membrane. And the membrane of a bubble has more water, the membrane, than it does in the interior space. So it's all inseparable. And then the work of Gerald Pollack, actually, that was quite an event, because we had Veda Austin and Gerald Pollack, talking about water and about consciousness. The work of Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, who works with the autistic kids, Dr. Hennessy from the tapes, the telepathy tapes, and what role does water play in telepathic understanding? But it just, to me, it all just goes into it's all one water, it's all one ether, it's all connected, it's all one thing, and there's resonance in the ether. So we can do my work at a distance, which I didn't think was possible. And when I did it and it worked, and then I did it again and it worked again, I did it a few more times, I'm like, well, this works. Like, somebody's biofield just appears on my table, even if we have no open line of communication. Coming back to your intention question, right? If I use my intention to imagine that they were on my table, then that field would show up and I could read and adjust it, right? So there has to be a law of nature, once again, that explains that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible. There has to be a law of nature that explains telepathy. Modern science just wants to push it aside and say, oh, that's nonsense. But it isn't nonsense. It works. It's repeatable. You know, even the very simple thing of like when you all of a sudden catch the vibe of a loved one. Like I was getting a massage the other day and all of a sudden I was like, oh, Frank wants chicken with peanut sauce for dinner. So I was like, okay, I got to go to the store to get that when I'm done here. And when I got out of my massage and I checked my phone, he had sent me a message asking for that for dinner, right? Like I totally caught his vibe. I caught his vibe. How does that work? It works in the same way that distance healing works, that telepathy works, because it's all one and it's connected, and it works through resonance. It works through resonance. So we're antennas and we resonate particular things, and we pick up and broadcast information instantaneously in this one fluid that we're all part of. It's instantaneous transmission. Like some people will use the phrase quantum entanglement and this idea that if the particle was previously entangled with this particle, you can separate them and you can put one at the other side of the universe and you turn one and that one will turn. I'm like, what kind of nonsense is that? First of all, there's no particles. Second of all, how do you know what's going on the other side of the universe? Like that is not a scientific statement to make, right? And I think that the whole quantum languaging and model kind of misses the connectivity of everything. You know, it misses the ether, it misses the unifying fluid of everything. And it makes it sort of spooky and odd. But I think resonance in the ether is just such a really simple, logical explanation for how and why we experience that phenomenon.
Inspired souls, you're obviously liking and enjoying this video, so please don't forget, do give it a thumbs up and a like. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Join in on the conversation in the comments below. Eileen's active on YouTube, as am I myself. What are your questions? What are you taking away from Eileen today? And also, what questions do you have? Eileen and I work together very closely one-on-one, and it's really inspiring to see what she's sharing here today. For me, the nature of our biofield and the energetic makeup of it, and how magnetism and electricity weave in together, and how there's this whole concept of electric health is just so profound, especially when you consider your nervous system and the basal ganglia and everything that's going on there in terms of wellness. But I also love the idea of electric health and electricity and people evolving into becoming more and more light into the future of, you know, I affectionately call you all lumen beings. So there's a real spiritual connotation behind all of this as well. And also the Schumann resonance and the earth vibration, the people vibration, the planetary vibration, the solar maximum that we're going through right now. So many great little bits in there. What are you taking away from today's conversation? What's most interesting for you? Leave that in the comments below. Back to Eileen in today's episode. Yeah, there's been there's been moments where my wife and I have a running joke, which is like, can you please get your own thoughts? Because I'll be like, oh, just start talking about something, and she'll be like, oh, wait a sec, I need to talk to you about this. And then it's like, that's exactly what I was just about to talk about. Like, can you get your own thoughts? So there is very much that, we were talking about water. You also talk about the ancestral river or parent streams of energy coming through, like from our mothers and our fathers' side. Like, and you and I did a bit of work. Thank you for that as well. I mean, like, and you were very aware that there were certain sides of the body that were related to certain parents in the field as well. Do these ancestral energies feel kind of different in the field to one's like own patterns and traumas, or are they one and the same? Like, yeah.
Well, one of the features that I discovered in my early explorations of the field was the first place I noticed it was on the left side, that I discovered that there was a current that was running down the left side about 10 inches away from the body. And it was maybe an inch wide. And that when I was moving the fork through the field, it would sound a particular way and feel a particular way. And then I'd get to this what felt like really like a river running down the side of the body, that it would have a completely different quality. And, you know, I figured all of this out just by really just listening really deeply, right? Just listening really deeply into the sound and just allowing it to inform me. And then I'd ask people questions. I'm like, this sounds like this, and it's making me think of this. And then people would corroborate that. And so what I first discovered the one on the mother side, and I didn't really pick up the one on the father side. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm only picking up the mother because with our mitochondrial DNA, right? We get more DNA from our mothers. But then in time, I started to discover and feel an interface with the one on the father side. And so the way that these appear is that our DNA isn't fixed chemistry, it's flowing music. And these rivers are the opportunity to tap into that song and listen to it. And you can hear all kinds of things. For example, like alcoholic lineages sounds like just chaos. It's like turgid. It's like a turgid river of chaotic sound. Because in alcoholism, problems never get solved. They just keep going downstream, and they go from generation to generation. So you can hear that. You can hear really all kinds of information in these ancestral rivers. But what's so interesting is that you can also change the information, and you can change it instantly. You can get the song to be more in tune. Like if there was a lot of hardship or a lot of trauma, there'll be heavy, dark notes and things like that. And just by sticking a fork in the river and letting the song that's flowing past it be informed by coherence starts to shake out the noise and amplify the deeper, beautiful signal. You know, all the gifts and the strengths, not just the trauma that we get from our ancestors. And when I've worked with people, especially people who've done a number of sessions, they see the effects of the work that they're doing upstream in their parents, if their parents are still alive, and downstream in their children. Where that people will report, like my mom has been trying to get him to clean out the garage for 15 years. And, you know, we've done a whole bunch of sessions working really deeply with him and how his clutter and all of a sudden dad's cleaning out the garage, right? Just things like that, that we see over and over and over and over again. So you realize, right, that we are all connected really in this vibrational unbroken chain back to the beginning of life itself. Is all written in the code of our body. And because there isn't any stuff, right? There is no fixed chemistry. Anything that you change in yourself is vibrating that string, if you will, that vibrational thread going both upstream and downstream. It's pretty cool.
It really is. And one of the things I also really love about your work is because most people carry in their awareness this awareness of 7 chakras and 7 energetic centers to the body. It seems like that's the sort of model from India that the West has sort of adopted super hard, such that it's almost forgotten that everybody actually has their own different energetic centers and different makeups generally. The 7's a really good place to sort of generally come into. But you also, you work to minor chakras at knees, minor chakras at feet, and then you've got the Earth star beneath the feet, the Sun star above the head. I mean, what brought you to factoring in these extra like energetic centers in the body? Did that again just emerge from you and your work with the forks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, you know, because originally I got that set of 7 and it said use them on the 7 chakras, and that's what I did. And I'd start at the root and I'd end at the head. But then after a while, I realized like every time I ended the head, people would get up and they'd be like lightheaded, and I was like, oh, okay, so I have to ground people. Like I got to go down and actually work on feet. And so I started working on feet. And then I discovered that like everything is in the feet. Like you can enter into the entire mindscape just through the feet. And just like in reflexology, right, the whole body is in the feet. And so it is in biofield tuning, that there's huge amounts of information that can be, if in doubt, just work on the feet, right? But then one day I had somebody come in that had a knee issue. And I somehow for years I didn't have anybody with knee issues. And I did it part-time in the beginning, just like 1 or 2 a week. And for 10 years, I just worked over the body. It was when I discovered the stuff in the field in 2006 that I started to ramp up my practice, because my outcomes became really dramatic when I started working in the field. And I was like, whoa, I'm actually onto something here. And then because my outcomes became more dramatic, more people were coming to me. And so things just got busier and busier from there. But then anyway, so I'm working in the knee, and then I really discovered that the knees relate so much to being stuck. And so much of what people struggle with, I think one of the biggest things I treat is really stuckness. Like, why do we go see anybody, especially when it comes to like personal growth or healing, is because we can't unstick ourselves. We would if we could, right? We've tried and it didn't work, or maybe we didn't try. And so getting people unstuck is really like, when I used to be in practice all the time, and I'm not really hardly at all anymore, but I felt like a tow truck driver. I live in Vermont on a dirt road. I mean, I was going up in the gullies, getting stuck. I was like, I just been pulling people out of ditches all day long, energetic ditches that people get stuck in. But such a big part of it is in the knees. The right knee tends to get reactive or have issues when we're blocked moving forward, maybe by other people, maybe by our own self-sabotage. Whereas the left knee tends to become an issue when the containers that have been holding us become problematic or unhealthy. We all need containers of like a job and a home and relationship and friends, but sometimes we'll stick to the devil we know. And I certainly have been guilty of that.
I'll put both hands up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then that's where left knee stuckness comes from. It's sort of sticking to what you know instead of having the courage or the vision to extract yourself and change your container. And so I was a little mortified when I realized that. I'm like, I've been treating people all these years and I haven't been treating the knees, and the knees have so much to do with the reasons why people come in the first place, that stuckness. So then as time evolved, we started to dawn on us that there are these other energy centers. I'll go off exploring. I mean, I've walked 100 feet away from people and then like come in and like hit, and our Tauruses are nested, from what I can tell, is that they're nested like Russian dolls into ever expanding tori, right? It's turtles all the way down kind of thing. So, and that was what I did with you, Amrit. We went out and we explored some of those other layers or levels of like the more expanded self. So I think you have infinite chakras, honestly. Let's not limit it to 7 or 11 or what have you. We're fundamentally infinite beings. We're localized as a point, but if you're in Australia and I can work on you, that means you're here too. We're everywhere because we're part of the one.
I recently read one of your papers on monopolar nodes. You've hypothesized that certain points in the human biofield act like magnetic monopoles, like the sun star above the head and the earth star below the feet, while we're talking about this toroidal, and potentially even this mother and father point on either side of the body. Can you explain this idea out for us?
Well, not really well, because when I first started exploring the field, right, and I was encountering the stuff in the field, I was like, well, what is the stuff? Is it free electrons? Is it photons? Is it phonons? Is it ions? Is it magnetic monopoles? Like, what am I encountering? Because I'd come across the concept of magnetic monopoles in my early research. And basically the idea that, we have free electrons and free protons, right, in a plasma, like those can be separate. So if the positive charge and negative charge can be separate in our atmosphere, from an electric standpoint, well, shouldn't magnetism be able to be? Can't we have like a monopole of negative charge and a monopole of positive charge? But they're not really well understood. And so it really rang a bell in my mind when I came across them. I'm like, I think these have something to do with this anatomy. I couldn't really find enough information on them. I mean, honestly, when I went looking for like, what is the biofield composed of in 2009, I didn't find an awful lot. I mean, there was definitely some, there were Russian researchers in the 50s and 60s, this fellow named Inushkin, who hypothesized that it's a bioplasma, which I would agree with. I think that makes sense. But what's the bioplasma composed of, right? And so recently I became interested again in magnetic monopoles. I went to try to find some information. And then I decided to ask ChatGPT, And my ChatGPT is, it thinks outside the box like I do, thankfully. I've trained it that way. And basically what I realized as I'm creating that paper with ChatGPT is like, oh my God, the mother and father spots are magnetic and they are kind of monopolar, right? And they're on this, because I feel like we have this north-south axis, right? We have our north-south axis down the center, but there's also, sometimes you see Tauruses as double Taurus, where there's a Taurus and then an elliptical plane and then a Taurus below. And so again, in my early explorations, I really felt like there was another plane at the solar plexus region. So these magnetic monopoles would actually become part of electromagnetic anatomy, that sort of like knuckles, right, in pipes, that they would guide and inform and stabilize structures. And so the Earth and Sun stars, the ones that are above and below, and the mother and father spots, seem to have an organizing and stabilizing quality to them. And so that it sort of fits in how magnetic monopoles are also being described, but they're trying to find them in like quantum superfluids and things like that. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, I've been staring at them and working with them for years and never thinking that they could actually be these magnetic monopoles. So are they? I don't know. There's certain, this is really a frontier still, because for so many years, science has been like, nonsense, you don't have a biofield, right? Or like, how are we going to explore and understand it? I mean, I've just been poking around with tuning forks, blindly in the dark, trying to figure out what it is that I'm encountering and describe it inside a scientific model that makes sense based on things we already understand, based on fractals, based on basic laws of reality that we've observed, right? But all I've done is create a hypothesis. Like, there's still so much more here to figure out and understand.
Well, innovation seems to be this really huge part of what you've been doing for the longest while. I mean, one of my questions here today was going to be, like, I don't want to sound like this, but being a woman in the space that you have been for the last 30 years, I mean, going into this, and already mainstream medicine has so much of this very patriarchal sort of feel to it. Science has a very patriarchal feel to it. I mean, you're moving against the tide a little bit. Now the tide's sort of catching up to you. But for a while there, I bet it wasn't like that. I mean, just as a mate, like, what's it been like, carrying it for like 30 years, sort of bucking up? And I know I've had the luxury of also seeing your chart astrologically and sort of seeing like there was no other way really that Eileen would have gone about it. But mate, like, that would have been, how has it been? You've probably seen so much shift in the last 30 years of people's propensity and acceptability and the appetite for the work that you're championing as well. But also being a woman in this space would have been quite the thing to wear. Is it getting easier now? Is it actually where you'd hope it to be, or is there still a long way for us to go?
It's interesting. I think for many years I was kind of oblivious about being a woman, and how it was an issue, and that I was in a male-dominated space. It really wasn't until I went to a consciousness conference in Arizona that was put on by the University of Arizona. It's mostly men, and they're all really brain-focused. And I presented a paper about how I believe that consciousness was in the field, that microtubules are the interface between, that they're like the antenna interface between the body and the field, and that this is mind, this is consciousness. I would even go so far as to say that our electrical system is our soul, because when you die, it's your light, right? It's your biological light. And when you die, your light goes out, and it takes all the memories with them. I mean, we should absolutely explain kids that remember past lives, that have crazy skills, that is clear that they learn in past lives, right? So here I am. I only have a master's in education, right? I wave tuning forks around. I'm from Vermont, like, look like an old hippie, whatever. And all these guys with PhDs, and I'm like, hey, I have a whole consciousness theory about biofields and this and that. And like, I encountered sexism. And I was like, wow, these guys don't care what I have to say because I'm female and I don't have a PhD. I mean, I tried to get a PhD, but so many people wanted me to teach them biofield tuning that I had to drop out. And so I never got my PhD. I did feel like it was important and I was gunning in that direction, but it didn't happen. Yeah, I'm also an inventor. I've invented a number of, different tuning forks and accessories and things like that. And just talking about tuning forks and energy fields, I mean, this was one of those things like how God asked me to sing. God also asked me to bring this out into the world. And it came to me in this, like what I call my prime directive. It came like certified mail, like into my mind very clearly. And it was a few months after I had discovered the field and I was working the field and things were really cool. And I was like, this is amazing. But at the time, I had a specialty food business that was growing like mad. And I thought that was what I was doing, was that. But then I got this very clear guidance. It said you need to go to college. I never went to college out of high school. So you need to go to college and get degrees. You need to learn and teach about sound. You need to bring this out into the world. You need to advance the science of this. You need to get into peer review and college textbooks and cover the earth with Biofield tuning, awaken an army. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I am not going out on the world stage, waving tuning forks around and talking about auras. No, no, no. Everyone will find their rotten tomatoes. Like, I will be such a target. I was like, there is absolutely no way that I am doing this. I mean, would you? Like, who in their right mind would do that? Like,
and then I'm picturing the Hogwarts letters coming through after that.
Pretty much what happened. And after a while, I realized, I was like, I am actually pretty well suited to this job because I'm practical, I'm grounded, I'm sensible, I'm not woo-woo, I'm not airy-fairy. I am very much a scientist just by nature. You know, I love experiments, I love exploring, I'm so curious about the nature of the world and how things work. So I realized that I was suited to it, and I knew that it was going to be a tough road to hoe, and it has been. But at the same time, it's been so interesting. It's been so gratifying, and the work really speaks for itself. I mean, once you get past that sort of veneer of like, that's the most woo-woo thing ever, you're like, oh, this actually makes sense, right? And people who read my books and get exposed to this, everybody says the same thing. They're like, this makes sense. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. There was one time I had this fellow in one of my classes who was a third generation war reporter, and he'd been in some real scenes, you know, in his life, and has come from a lineage of it. He'd been in a lot of war-torn areas, and he was doing his practice session in front of the class, finding and adjusting stuff, and he's like, this shit is real. And we're like, yeah, it is. This shit is real. So I stand in the fact that it is real and that it does produce outcomes and that it is a very elegant model. And once you start looking through the lens of electric health and treating the electrical system, like everything in the physiology, your hormones, everything is downstream of what your electrical system is doing. And so if you get your electrical system in order, you get it rhythmically and tonally and energetically just groovy, then your body and your life become that. And it's very quick. Obviously everybody's different and there's different levels of complexity. I've had many, many tune-ups. But it's really amazing what you can accomplish in just a few sessions. In fact, we have peer review research that demonstrates that. We've done a few studies and gotten it into peer review and more on the way. So, we're doing the science, doing all the things to show that it is valid and that this is really like where medicine is going. You asked me earlier, like how it's changed in 30 years. It's changed dramatically in 30 years. Just dramatically. And it started really in 2012. And again, since COVID, people are less trusting of the chemical, mechanical, medical model and more open to what else is possible. And I do think that the telepathy tapes, honestly, made a huge impact in the culture, and people have really opened their minds. So it's gotten a lot easier in the last few years. Sound healing in the last few years has really blown up. So I rarely encounter the kind of like vigorous pushback and skepticism that I did early on. But I also really had to learn how to speak about it, like to really understand the science of it. It was part of what really drove me into the science, was it's like, I have to talk about this. I have to have some kind of understanding of what I'm speaking about so that it does make sense. And so I've learned how to convert skeptics in like under a minute at this point. So it's gotten a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah. I, for one, am very grateful for the way the work, I want to say, lives within you, because it's just the way you carry it is, yeah, it's really inspiring. It's really inspiring, Eileen. I mean, for those that want to dive in even deeper, I'll put links in, as I said before, to the show notes below for people to be able to go get their forks. But there's also an opportunity, like, for people to learn how to actually use their forks. I mean, recently we had Stefan Burns come on the podcast. We had a great conversation with him, and I think you've been on his podcast as well. He's coming along to your level 1 to learn how to wield the forks, to become a wizard, Harry. So, yeah, I think it'd probably be incumbent upon me to put links to that. Is that the biofieldtuning.com? Is that the best places for people to connect in?
Mm-hmm. Biofieldtuning.com, and you can learn about classes. It's a super gratifying practice, and it integrates really well into so many other practices. And we have doctors, nurses, chiropractors, massage therapists, Reiki practitioners, people who are doing sound healing with other tools. Once you start to grasp the biofield and really work in the biofield and the biofield anatomy, it's so fascinating. It's really like learning the language of vibration, getting inside people's minds with sound. It's fascinating, and it helps. It helps physical, mental, emotional, creates a lot of personal growth in the people who learn it too. It's really life-changing. So we have classes, we have online and in-person classes. I describe how to do it in my first book, Tuning the Human Biofield. There's only one chapter in that book on how to use forks, because I figured out how to use the forks in such a simple way. Like, people are always saying, well, how do you treat this or how do you treat that? And it's really simple. Like, you comb through the field, you drop into the center, you integrate, and then you make space out front. So everything is like, whoop, whoop. How do you treat anxiety? Whoop, whoop. How do you treat depression? Whoop, whoop. I mean, it's all, it couldn't really be simpler. But I had to reframe our entire cosmological story, introduce plasma, ether, the nature of sound, like all of these things, in order to make Zoop Zoop make sense. Because if you didn't understand all of those other things, like, I don't know, I find that the context of the cosmology is really important. So it's in Tuning the Human Biofield. I go really in depth about the biofield anatomy and electric body, electric health. So anybody who's any kind of body worker or wellness provider or mom, parent, it can be really helpful. Like, somebody gets an ouchie or an accident or a health issue in a particular area, go look it up. Like, what does this area relate to? What are the tendencies? What's the mental or emotional underlying issue that may be present? And then you get that reflection of yourself that helps you to put yourself back in order again. So the biofield anatomy is super useful. So that's there. And then there's also at Sing the Body Electric, we have programs live and virtual in that as well. And they're all fun, and it's great to put them together. We definitely have lots of people who are tuners and do Sing the Body Electric, and they get their clients to tone with them. So that's
I love
all
it.
there.
I'll put links to all of that in the show notes and the description below. I mean, Eileen, you know me, I could talk to you forever. I mean, there's even elements that we've, like, I mean, how do I not talk about the fact that you found within your toroidal field, you mapped one's astrological chart to it, and were able to tune people's, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this, to tune people's charts. I mean, using the forks in the field and the awareness of the toroidal field and the astrology, like, what
So
the
what
actual
is-
factual.
Yeah. What does that look like, right? It looks like your astrological chart. And so, yes, I did. We discovered that that within these 12 bands are the 12 houses of the zodiac. And we can make like a 12-foot circle on the floor, put you in the middle of it, put your chart up on the laptop and actually go with the forks, go through your field and find all the luminaries that are in your chart in your biofield, which is pretty mind-blowing because it makes you realize that the electromagnetic influence of the heavenly bodies is not just way out there, but it's in your own electrical biofield. It's like right here, right? And I've had Saturn and Neptune crossing over my Chiron at 0 degrees of Aries, and boy, have I felt it, right? But it's happening like in my own electrical system, as well as the Earth's, our atmosphere. So tuning people's charts, that's the sort of newest development in biofield tuning is chart tuning. So if you know about astrology and you become a certified tuner, then you'll be able to learn how to do this chart tuning as well, which is really profound. I mean, it's a whole other way of accessing and understanding and working with the tensions within the psyche. And helping to release them, right? Because you have tension in your astrological chart and it shows up when you go, you're like, what's with this tension here? You can release that tension from your chart just like you can from your field and your body, which is very cool. It's very liberating, right? This is all about becoming more and more free, which is where all of our souls want to go.
And it comes back to that tension piece and alleviating it. I mean, I think you're still being modest in that. Like, you are still pushing the frontier of science in this space. Like, papers are coming out regularly. I mean, even just recently looking at, like, electromagnetism moving from, like, even just questioning the fact, does it go from 4 dimensions to 5? Like, there's so much in there. Eileen, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to save you from my torrent of questions because I literally can do this with you forever. But honestly, I have to say, thank you so much. I mean, to me, it's such a pleasure to be in this conversation with yourself. And just, there are so many, like we said, science, medicine, so many things that you've turned upside down and then found such profound anecdotal evidence for, right? That it just makes so much sense, that it's like, hey, and this, and for me, it's not just this conversation that, like we've been reflecting on, it's 30 years worth of anecdotal evidence that we get to stand on, and this has been your entire life's work and, you following through on callings potentially when they made no sense, but thank the universe for all the Hogwarts letters. I mean, I'm just really, really grateful for you carrying the work the way that you do and you being you. So thank you so much for you, Eileen. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Amaranth. Thank you. I appreciate you too. I love the space that you hold as well. And thanks so much for having me.
Woo! Inspired souls, you made it through to the end of another incredible episode. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. Thank you so much for your incredible blessings. You obviously made it all the way through to this video, so please do give this video a thumbs up and a like. It really helps. And I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that have subscribed to this podcast. Everything you see around here, like I like to say, is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and your support. Nothing around here would be possible without that support. And at the time of this recording, only 20% of you that are actually watching these videos regularly are subscribed. 80% of you, this is your 4th, 5th, 6th video that you're watching and you haven't yet taken the time to subscribe. So please do us a solid. Do us a favor. Take a moment, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. Join the movement, join the community. Join us in supporting love, positivity, and wisdom around the planet, one episode, one ripple at a time. Thank you so much in advance for your support. And on screen now, an opportunity for you to dive in even deeper into your inspired evolution journey, onwards, upwards, and inwards. So go on, take your pick and make your click. I'll see you in the next one. Stay inspired, keep evolving.